Okay, back in AI, and yesterday you should have looked at some swatches. We looked at Pantone solid coated color. That's one of the important color choices you can use. Color bridge is something else, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But for right now, you can take a look at my workspace, and I have no drawing up here. I have no artwork that I'm working on. My workspace is empty. And if I were to go up to Windows and open up my swatches palette, notice there aren't any colors in there because there's no artwork in the workspace. So I just want to make you realize that each time you set up your color palette, that color palette's going to be specific to the artwork that you're working on. So now I'm going to go up to File, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open my recent files, and that's an easy shortcut for me finding my frog outline.ai. And now, when I go up to my window and I open up my swatches palette, my colors that I selected, and that was the last lesson that you did, you selected colors that you might like to use with your frog outline from the Pantone solid coated colors. And then we also went ahead and we made some gradients as well. And we were playing around with our gradients. And we'll talk more about our gradients after we're done looking at our frog outline. The other thing that we're going to learn today, and now I can pull this out and I can put this wherever I want it. If I want to put it here, or if I want it to go back in here. I don't know if you can see that, but there's a blue line that just showed up, and I put it back here in the palette. So let me do that again. So I can take this and I can pull it out if I want it to move it around. And then if it's in the way, I can put it back. And when I drag it back over to the palette area and I get that blue line, well, that's not what I wanted to do, but let's go back here. I can also just click on the arrows. But let me pull it out again because there's a way for you to put it back. And I don't want the blue arrow there. I want the blue arrow. There it is. I want that blue line. If you can see that blue line, it's right here. And I drop it in there, and there goes my color palette back in here. Okay, so let's pull it out again. And all these little shortcuts are things that professionals know, and it makes it easier as you're starting to work with a lot of tools. We're going to go up to Windows, and you're going to go ahead and make sure that your Layers palette is visible. And this is in alphabetical order, A, B, C, D. And here we go down to Layers, L, right under K. There it is. And here's my Layers palette. Layers is critical to working successfully in these programs. You have to use layers. Don't ignore your layers. On layer 1, you have your original frog outline. And so we're just going to leave it there for right now, and we're going to create. Okay, so in case you missed that, I'm going to go back and do that again. I'm going to delete layer 1 copy. Okay, so I'm going to unlock it. So I have layer 1, which is my frog outline. It's just my outline. And what I want to do is I want to go to this drop-down box, and I want to duplicate layer 1. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to work with my copy layer, and I'm going to lock this first layer, and I'm going to be here on this layer. And when the layer is highlighted blue, that's how you know that you're working in this layer. Now, with these tutorials, you can play these tutorials. Again, I told you you should have them side by side for when you're working, because you should be doing this along with the tutorial. The actual best way of doing this is watching the tutorial all the way through the first time, and then going back and splitting your screen and watching the tutorial while you work. And we're going to go ahead, we're going to make a new layer, and we're going to go ahead and create new layer. And we're going to create, and we're going to call this layer Stars. And you might think, well, how come we're not going to color the background first? And I'll tell you why in a little bit, but just follow along with me. So we're going to color in the stars. And there's 2 ways I'm going to show you can make stars. And we're going to put this palette back because we don't need our color palette right now. So let's get it back in there. And I want to move this up here so I have some room to work. And the first thing we're going to practice with is our pen tool. So there's your pen tool, And again, there's a little drop-down box behind it. So if you put your cursor over it and you don't see the pen tool and you see something else, do the drop-down box and make sure pen tool is selected. And just do the keyboard A, and if you get into it and you can't get the lines out and the lines are everywhere, just hit the letter A, and it will release your pen tool. So let's go ahead and let's work. Let me unlock this layer here. Okay, so let's make sure our stars is highlighted. We have our pen tool selected, and then we're going to go over to stroke. And so here in our, not our swatches, but in our, where is it? Here. We're going to go, when you click on these lines right here, you're going to go, okay, I want my stroke to be a little heavier than 1 point for my stars, so I'm going to do a 2-point stroke. And then I'm going to make sure that, let's see, all right, so we have no color fill and black is the outline, and that's what we want. There's another way you could have changed that stroke, and you could go up here to your options palette, and here you can decide what kind of line you want to make. You can make all kinds of different lines. Let's just stick with a uniform line right now. And then you can also, this is a basic line, okay, and we have a 2-point stroke. And it tells us right here there is no color. See, here's our swatches again up here. So there's more than one place to find them. And then we know that our outline is black. And so we're going to take our pen tool and we're going to go and create our anchor points. And that is one way for us to work on our stars. And then I'm going to hit the letter A on my keyboard, and it's going to release and bring me back to the selection tool. So I can release that pen tool, and it doesn't get too crazy with lines everywhere. Okay, and so I have my star outlined to my pen tool. And what happens if I want to change the stroke of my, or change the color of the stroke on that? And what I could do is I could go ahead and go to my swatches palette and just make sure that I have the stroke box selected so you can see the whole entire box. And maybe what I want to do is make that stroke, I don't know, violet. And I want to make the make it a little thicker so I can really see it. What happens if I do 5 point? Okay, well I have a nice thick violet stroke. Okay. And again, you can play that over and over again if you don't understand how that was done. But maybe I want the fill, which is the inside color, to be this really pale eggshell color. And I can do that. Maybe I don't like that. Maybe I want to change it. Maybe I like that. Maybe I want to do complementary color stars. Maybe I want to make a gradient for my stars. And so I can go here to gradient, and I now have these two colors selected. I don't think I want that color, though. I just want maybe the yellow color selected for my gradient. And I want to go over to gradient, and I don't want to have any black. I just want this color. So I'm going to click on this and see my sliders. I'm going to drop my black out. I want to pull my black out of there. Or I'm going to go ahead and pull my white right over my black. And go ahead and put in my yellow. And then maybe I want to do a yellow and white gradient. And it should be allowing me to, yeah, there. So, okay. I'm going to go Control Z and show you how to do that again. I now have the yellow color here and the white color here, and I don't want any black in this. So I'm going to pull the black out. I'm just going to drop it out of there. And now I'm going to get this kind of nice gradient. And I can get a linear gradient, which is lengthwise, or I can get a radial gradient, which is, so let's try that. And let's see if we can apply that, and let's see how that looks. So I clicked on my radial gradient, and there it is in my star. But maybe I don't like it. Maybe I want to change it. So now when you create your own gradients, you can adjust those to to anything you like. You can play around with it and get some fancy effects with that. Or if you don't like the radial, you can just use a linear gradient and just have the light source coming from one side. This is really good when you're learning how to shade. But my stroke went away, so let's be done with that. And let's go back to stroke. Let's actually go back to my swatches. And now what I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I put my stroke back in. So by going back up here and making sure that I select my stroke color, you see it's just the outline. And remember, it's 5 points, so it's a little thick. So here's the inside of the star color right now, and here's my outline. And here's my pen tool, and I'm going to go back to the star. So there, and we're going ahead and making sure that we have that pen tool going all the way around our star, and then hitting A and releasing it, and making sure that that's purple, because we want it to be purple, and we also want it to be 5 point. So let's make sure we have it purple 5 point. You don't have to do yours purple 5 point. You could do yours any one you want, any kind you want. I'm just giving you the examples. Let's do another one. And so let's go ahead and let's go to my pen tool, make my anchor points. And because I have both of those selected, it just went ahead and filled it for me. So let's go back to swatches so you can see that I have my gradient that I created for the inside of my star, and I have my stroke color selected, and so it's going ahead and it's filling those stars in with the exact stroke and color fill that I want. And if I want to change any of that, I can change any of that anytime I want. But there's an easier way to make stars, and if you're, you might have already guessed this, and you might have already guessed that you could go ahead and just use by right-clicking on the star tool. So I could go ahead and just create a star right here, and then move it where I wanted it, and it's going to come in with the exact fill I want. Pick my direct selection tool and move it wherever I want. It doesn't have to be in the same exact place. Isn't that nice? That's so easy, isn't it? And if I want it to be in the same exact place, I have to rotate it. So when you get that little rotation, and wow, that's so easy. Look at all those stars I can make, and they're perfect. But you might want to make some with the pen tool and some with the star tool. And again, you can change your inside color, your fill color, or your stroke color to any colors you want. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's make another star with the star tool, and let's change these colors. So let's make the stroke, just for purposes of this tutorial, let's make the stroke this blue color. So let's try, let me get my selection tool here. Let's try, first of all, the first thing you have to do is don't change your colors yet, make your shape first. So let's go ahead and make your star shape, and let's and you see it's loading with these colors. I could change my fill to this, I could change my stroke to blue. And maybe I want a thicker stroke. Go up to the stroke, it's 1 point now, maybe I want that stroke 3 point. And I could do that. I could also make another gradient. Let's make another star over here, and we can move them and make them as large or as small as we want in a little bit. But what if I want to change that gradient, that center fill color, to a different color? So let's pick, I'm going to make my stroke with no color, and I'm going to make my fill with maybe this color. And I'm going to go to gradient, and I'm going to select this and drag this down to my gradient scale, and you see how that changes? And maybe I want the black to go away again. I actually kind of like the black in there. I actually like it just like that. I would like that to be my sky color, actually. But I could just